Welcome to episode 38 of the Valley Sports Talk podcast. It's just me and Brandon today. The other two guys are busy. But today we're going to be going over NFL free agency. Free agency has been open for about 5 days now, and there's already been a lot of moves. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be going through every single team's major free agent moves, and we're going to sort of give them a grade. Um, I don't know if Brandon, if you have the players up, or if you just want me to name off their notable free agents.
Uh, I just found it, so we're good.
Very good. Okay, so we're gonna go alphabetical. So we're gonna start off with Arizona. The major moves for Arizona was they re-signed Colt McCoy to a 2-year, $7.5 million deal. They brought back James Conner, 3 years, 21. They re-signed Zach Ertz to a 3-year, 31, and then they brought in young corner Jeff Gladney for 2 years at a um, undisclosed price. So personally, I'm going to give him a C. Just the reason I'm giving him a C is because the Seahawks got worse in that division. The 49ers are still probably looking to trade Jimmy G, and the Rams got better, maybe a bit better. So they didn't really do much, in my opinion, which I don't think was really the best idea. They have to make Kyler Murray happy because they had sort of like a falling out or a bit of a falling out this sort of off season, but they didn't really do much. Like I like the James Conner re-sign because he was a beast last year. And but other than that, the only other notable name on that list is Zach Ertz, and they paid a 31-year-old tight end $10 million a season, which doesn't really make sense in my opinion.
Yeah, for all the reasons you gave them a C, I'm gonna give them a D. Like you said, the division got worse than last year. I mean, last year was probably the best division in football. It's definitely not anymore. And like you said, the Arizona Cardinals, they didn't really get anybody. Sure, they signed James Conner and Zach Ertz back, which is great, but they lost a lot of players. Christian Kirk, uh, Christian Kirk. Oh yeah, that's right.
You got it right.
And then I was thinking of the Blue Jays back catcher. Uh,
Alejandro.
yeah, I thought I said Alejandro by accident. But they lost some key pieces as well. You're kind of banking on like uh oh my god, I'm blanking. Wide receiver.
D-Hop.
Thank you, D Hop. You're banking on a healthy D Hop because if he's not healthy this year, you have basically AJ Green and who else? So they could have done more in my opinion. So I'm gonna give them a D.
Moving down, we have my Atlanta Falcons. The only two really moves they've made so far is they brought in a aging corner Casey Hayward to a 2-year, $11 million deal, and they re-signed Younghoe Koo to a 5-year, $24 million deal. I'm going to give them a D because they didn't do anything. I was really upset. Before even Tom Brady re-announced that he was unretiring, that division was wide open, and they let their best linebacker in Foye Oluokun go. He signed with the Jags for a lot of money. They let another player go. They let Russell Gage sign with the Bucks. So now they don't even have a receiver right now with Calvin Ridley getting suspended. They brought in a former Pro Bowl wide receiver, but Casey Hayward isn't the player he used to be. And then they brought back Younghoe Koo. So kind of interesting offseason so far for the Falcons. They're also in on Deshaun Watson apparently. So we'll see sort of what happens there. But I'm going to give them a D just because that division was wide open. They haven't really taken advantage of that.
Yeah, I'm also gonna give them a D. Like you said, the division until Tom Brady came back was wide open for sure. And I mean, not to their fault, I guess, but they lost their top wide receiver. They're probably is their running back still under contract? Or is he a free
Patterson,
agent?
no. Cordell Patterson's a free agent right now.
Okay, that's what I thought. And he's probably not going to come back because he's going to want a lot of money. We'll see what happens, I guess. But I mean, yeah, they brought back who's one of the best kickers in the game, but they don't really have a wide receiver right now. And this is, I mean, I guess they can still get Deshaun Watson, but if they run with Matt Ryan, it's one of his last years. Uh, I guess playing at a high level, and he doesn't really have any targets to throw to. So
Moving down, we have the Baltimore Ravens. The main signings they have. They signed O-tackle Moses Morgan to a 3-year, $15 million deal. They re-signed Michael Pierce, who used to be there a couple years ago, to a 3-year, 16. And their big signing, they brought in the former Saints safety Marcus Williams. I'm actually gonna give them an A. I think this is a very good offseason for the Baltimore Ravens. They did make the playoffs last year, which is kind of disappointing. but then they signed probably the one of the best secondary players in free agency, and Marcus Williams, to sort of go along with that already really good secondary with players like Chuck Clark and Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters. And then they brought in O tackle and Alejandro Villanueva retired, so that Morgan Moses signing sort of is their um, replacement for them. And they brought in a D tackle in Michael Pierce, who he's a big nose tackle. He's like 350, clogs up the middle, wreaks havoc. He'll be great to go along with their edge rushers and Calais Campbell. So I think it's a great offseason for the Baltimore Ravens so far.
I'm gonna give them a B. I think I would have also I'll give them a B plus, I guess. I would have given them an A if they got Darius Smith, but I guess that contract kind of fell through last second. That would have been huge for them as well. Also, I think like obviously Baltimore's got a great team, but I think they need something on offense. They need one more piece, in my opinion. They either like a decent running back or a wide receiver, and I think this team would be disgusting. So I would like to see them add something offensively in terms of weapons, and I think this team could be one of the best in the league for sure.
Moving down, we have the Buffalo Bills. Their big signing obviously was bringing in Von Miller, 6 years, 120. They brought in former tight end of the Buccaneers, O.J. Howard, on a 1 year, 3.5, and they brought in a Pro Bowl guard in Roger Saffold in 1 year, 1 year, $1 million. So the one thing that I'm gonna give them a B minus, I would give them way higher. I don't like that Von Miller contract at all. You're paying a 33-year-old edge rusher who's past his prime. He didn't have a look very good in my opinion this season. Like he's still obviously it's Von Miller. He's still great, but he's not what he used to be. And you're giving him 6 years, 120 million. So you're paying him like 20 mil a year, just over 20 mil a year till he's 39. I'm not a big fan of that contract. Other than that, I like the OJ Howard signing. He's sort of been behind Gronk, but he still has some potential, even though he'll probably be behind Dawson Knox. And I like the always like a good O line move with Saffold.
Yeah, I don't really like the contract either, but if we're just talking this year, it's hard not to give this team an A. They signed lots of players, decent players as well, and this team was a coin flip away from the AFC Championship game last year. So I think Von Miller can definitely get them over the hump this year. If we're talking in 3, 4 years in the future, it might not look so hot, but right now it's definitely a great signing for this team, and they're definitely going for a Super Bowl.
Moving on to the Carolina Panthers, their sort of notable free agency signings. They brought in Titans running back Donta Foreman on a 1 year, 2 mil. They brought in Browns former receiver Rashad Higgins on a 1 year deal. They brought in Rams guard Austin Corbett on a 3 year, $29 million deal. And then they brought in former Vikings safety Xavier Woods, 3 years, 7, 15. Actually, I'm gonna give us a B. I like the Dante Foreman signing. Just because who knows what if Christian McCaffrey gets moved, if he isn't healthy. They sort of have a 1-2 punch in Hubbard and Dante Foreman to back him up. Dante Foreman's sort of like a bigger running back, where Hubbard could sort of be your first and second down guy. I obviously, like I said with Saffold, I always like a good offensive line signing. Because you never can have too many people on the good players on the offensive line. And then Xavier Woods is a above average safety. And that secondary was not very good last year. So it's a pretty good offseason. They're not in Deshaun Watson trades anymore, so it'll be interesting to see what they're looking like for quarterback next year. That'll sort of like tell their story next year for how good a team they'll be, but who knows?
Yeah, the thing with the Panthers obviously is they don't got a great quarterback, and Christian McCaffrey can't seem to be healthy. So this division, like we said earlier, was wide open until Tom Brady came back. So now with the signing of Deontay Foreman, I wonder. I know we heard a little while ago that Christian McCaffrey, the market was open. I wonder how actively they're shopping a guy like Christian McCaffrey now. Now that they have Deontay Foreman, who's solid, and then you got Chuba Hubbard, who's coming into his own. He's still young. He's got time. I don't even know what to give this. Like, they signed a lot of decent players, but they're still not a good team. So, like, I guess I'll jump on the bandwagon and give you a B as well.
Moving on, next we have the Chicago Bears. They're really only sort of notable signing was they brought in Larry Ogunjobi for 3 years, 40.5 million, which is a bit steep of a price for me, even though he hasn't really sort of like shown that he can be that player. And they obviously traded away Khalil Mack, so they're in no way to compete for a championship. And then they gave Ogunjobi 13.5, so I'm gonna go ahead and give them a C.
I'm also gonna give them a C. It's not because they didn't do anything in free agency, like, and they don't really like is they I mean, they're not in the greatest division, so it could be described as open, but they don't have a very good team right now. So they got a good offense, they got some good building blocks, but it's more of like what they lost. Marlon Mack's a big loss. He's been a Bear for ever since I started watching football. He's been great. That's a big loss for them. So yeah, I'll you said a C?
Yep.
I hate the Bears. I'll give them a C minus.
Moving down, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. They're notable free agents. They brought in former Falcons tight end Hayden Hurst on a one-year deal. They brought in former Buccaneers guard Alex Cappa on a 4-year, $40 million deal. Brought in former Patriots center Ted Karras on a 3-year, $80 million, and then they franchise tag Jesse Bates. I actually am going to give them a B. The one thing they needed to do this offseason was protect Joe Burrow, and they did that. Obviously, Kappa and Terrace weren't like or Karras, sorry, weren't the top options out there, but they are very above average starters, in my opinion. And that's the one thing they needed to do, in my opinion, was to solidify that offensive line. And I like Hayden Hurst. He's a former Falcon. And with CJ Uzama going to the Jets, who I'm sure we'll talk about a bit, had sort of a hole there. And Hayden Hurst was behind Kyle Pitts last year. He was behind Mark Andrews in Baltimore, and he was a first-round pick a couple of years ago. So, he definitely has the talent. Being it with Joe Burrow, who knows what he can do.
This makes me sound like a fake, but are any of the Cincinnati Bengals wide receivers free agents?
I don't think so.
So okay, well then I really like this personally. I'll give them an A. They have they signed two Michael Thomases. That's funny. Yeah, so like when you're as good of a team as the Bengals are, who lost by one possession game in the Super Bowl last year, one of the biggest things, and we saw this from Tampa Bay 2 years ago, is being able to keep your team the same. And they did that. They brought back Jesse Bates on a franchise tag. Like Noah just said, their offense is basically the same. And then you just brought veteran Michael Thomas, who, I mean, we were talking about not recently, but we were talking about how he's not very good anymore because injuries and age and stuff has caught up to him. But that's when we were still looking at him as a wide receiver one role. He can come in here and be a wide receiver 3-4, and I think that's perfect for him and perfect for this Cincinnati Bengals team for another deep run.
Moving down, we now have the Cleveland Browns, who they didn't really sign too many big trades. They traded for Chase Vinovich from the Patriots. They obviously traded for Amari Cooper, who they literally got for nothing. They signed kicker returner and wide receiver Jakeem Grant, who got really wicked speed for 3 years, 13 mil. They brought in Taven Bryan, D tackle, on a 1-year, $5 million deal, and then they franchise tagged Njoku. I'm going to give this a B just for the fact that they got Amari Cooper for next to nothing, but they also don't know what's going to be happening with them for quarterback next year.
Yeah, I'm gonna give them a C. I like all the moves they made. Obviously, getting David Njoku on a franchise tag, bringing him back's nice. He
And
started.
they cut Austin Hooper.
Yeah, did they?
Yeah, they
Okay.
did.
Obviously, Amari Cooper's good. Jarvis Landry's gone, which kind of sucks, but I'm going to give them a C, not because of the people they sign and the free agent moves they make. It's the way that this organization as itself has handled this offseason so far. You basically said straight to Baker Mayfield, hey, we're looking for somebody else. We're trying to move on from you. And then when they couldn't, they said that they wanted to say that they want to go with Baker again, and now Baker doesn't want to. So they've kind of screwed themselves over in that sense. And it's hard to be good no matter how many people you sign if you don't have a starting quarterback. So I'm going to give them a C personally, just because of the way the organization as a whole has handled the offseason.
Okay, so next moving on is the Dallas Cowboys. They're notable ones. They re-signed wide receiver Michael Gallup to a 5-year, 62.5. They brought in safety Malik Hooker on a 2-year, $8 million, and they franchise tag Dalton Schultz. I'm gonna give them a B minus. I like the Gallup. I actually like the Gallup more than I like the Amari Cooper trade, just for the fact that he's younger. And Amari Cooper's sort of getting old, and he was getting paid a lot. So they got a lot of cap relief there that they're able to sign Michael Gallup with, and having a wide receiver core of Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, and Dalton Schultz, your tight end, is great weapons for Dak. Dallas Cowboys are obviously probably best team in that division. So I think it was a solid offseason for them.
Yeah, what did you give them?
A B minus.
Okay, I'll give them a C plus. I at first I didn't really understand the Amari Cooper trade, but then I guess who would you rather have, Michael Gallup, a younger Michael Gallup, or an older Amari Cooper? And I guess they went with Michael Gallup. I don't think that's a bad decision there. And like Noah said, keeping Dalton Schultz is nice. He's been there for a while. He understands the playbook, and he knows how that offense runs, and he's pretty good himself. The only thing that scares me is this defense. It's been bad for a while. Well, I guess I'm under average for a while, and they didn't really do anything to make it better. So we'll see how that works. I mean, like Noah said, this division isn't very good, so they'll have no problem making playoffs. But it doesn't matter if you make playoffs if you lose first game. So we'll see.
Moving on, we now have the Denver Broncos, who obviously they brought in Russell Wilson via trade. And then their other really big signing was they brought in outside linebacker Randy Gregory on a 5-year, $70 million, which was a bit of a weird deal because he got reported that he was going back to the Cowboys, and all of a sudden, 2 hours later, the deal fell through. There's a lot of deals that fell through this offseason, which is really
Yeah,
weird.
weird.
I'm gonna give them an A just because I'm including that Russell Wilson deal sort of in this in the free agency, and I also really like the Randy Gregory signing. They paid him a lot, but he sort of is going to be that Von Miller replacement to go on the other side of Bradley Chubb. So I think of having a 1-2 punch of Randy Gregory and Bradley Chubb is great. And then obviously they brought in top 5 quarterback when he's healthy, Russell Wilson. So I'm gonna give them an A.
Yeah, I hate agreeing, but I'm also going to give them an A. It's hard not to give them an A. Like they realize they have a really good team apart from a quarterback, and the problem is they're in a really hard division. So you had to go big or go home, and they chose to go big, and they went Russell Wilson. And Noah said
Like it.
Randy Gregory is no slouch himself. This offense is scary now. They got all the pieces. The only thing that's stopping them is their division, and I'm excited to watch how this plays out.
Moving on, we have the Detroit Lions, who actually, now that I'm looking at it, they made a lot of moves.
Holy crap!
The big ones are they obviously signed DJ Chark, 1 year, $10 million. They brought in they re-signed Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond, Alex Anzalone, and then they brought in safety Tracy Walker. Um, I'll, I'll give them a B minus just because I like the DJ Chark. You know, he was hurt last year. They sort of gave him a 1-year prove it deal worth $10 million. And then I like the Tracy Walker signing. He's a good young safety. I think he's around 20, 26, so he still has some room to grow. Obviously, Detroit's not contending for a Super Bowl anytime soon, so they sort of just bringing in players just to sort of get them through. So I'll give them a B minus just because I like the DJ Chark signing.
I'll actually give them a B just because the point you said. I think the Detroit Lions understand they're not going to be a great team next year, and they went out and signed a bunch of young guys to see how it works. Like Josh Reynolds, if I'm not mistaken, is young.
25, 26, I think.
That's not bad. Raymond's young, I believe, as well.
Yep.
And then they also have Amon-Ra St. Brown still, and then DJ Chark's young himself. So they got a decent wide receiver core there now that's young, and maybe they can build and grow over the next couple years together. And then obviously they still have a high draft pick in this draft. So they're going to have a good young core, and if they can keep it together, then they're doing it right. So I'll give them a B.
Moving on to Brandon's least favorite team at the moment, the Green Bay Packers.
Jeez.
On here it says Devontae Adams franchise tag, but we obviously got the news yesterday that he had been traded to the Las Vegas Raiders for 2 first-round picks. We can sort of give our thoughts on that. Personally, Brandon said we were at the gym when this happened. Brandon's running the treadmill. I run over to him. He goes, "Don't talk to me." I'm like, okay, I guess he knows. But I'm gonna steal Brandon's line. He said this: "What's the point of re-signing Aaron Rodgers if you weren't going to bring back Devontae Adams?"
Exactly.
And I agree with that 100% because right now, Aaron Rodgers' number one target is Allen Lazard. So I don't know what, and they obviously didn't bring. They're obviously not bringing back Darius Smith. We'll talk about it in a minute, but they brought back Devondre Campbell, who was a stud last year for them. He was an all pro. They brought him in on a 5-year, $50 million deal, which is a lot of friggin' money. But um, great. But I'll let Brandon sort of talk about the Devontae Adams trade a bit more.
Yeah, I don't know, like, can you give a team an F? Like, I mean, like, bringing back Aaron Rodgers, everyone was like, "Okay, they're going for it one more time." And, then they franchised Devontae Adams, franchise tagged him, and then there he goes. So, I mean, like Noah said, um, what I was saying at the gym, if you had plans of trading Devontae Adams, what's the point in bringing back Aaron Rodgers? Because this team has no wide receivers anymore. Like, they literally have nothing. Because I think Valdez-Scantling's gone as well. He's
He's
a
a
free
free
agent
agent.
currently.
Apparently they have interest in re-signing him though.
Oh, I'm sure they do, and maybe he'll want to because he'd be the number one target. But like this team quickly by just losing one player is not a Super Bowl contender anymore, in my opinion. So if you're not gonna, I mean, they'll make the playoffs probably because this division isn't very good unless Minnesota does something. But like we were saying about Dallas, like if you're gonna make the playoffs and just lose in the first round, what's the point? So I mean, Aaron Rodgers, I don't get it. I don't
Yeah,
understand.
it's definitely puzzling.
Devontae
Moving
Campbell's
on.
nice. Unless they
Sorry,
want, like, Odell, I don't know, unless they're going for, like, Odell or something,
Odell or maybe Julio now. Who
I
knows?
guess, like, gee.
Moving on with the Texans, who they also made a lot of moves. Their big ones, they re-signed Desmond King, 2 years, $7 million. They got Blake Cashman in a trade from the Jets. They brought in center Justin Britt, um, guard AJ Can, but it's the Texans. I'm gonna give it a C just because it's sort of not. It doesn't really put them forward. Doesn't really put them back. They finally will probably be able to find a Deshaun Watson trade, so maybe they'll get some good assets back in that, obviously. But for right now, just based on those moves, I'll give it a C because it really wasn't anything good or bad.
Yeah, it's really hard to give them anything but a C because there's so many they picked up so many people and there's a couple decent names in there, but, like, nothing outstanding, and, I mean, with the team they got now, that's kinda what you can expect, so they're gonna be at the bottom of the league again this year. Like Noah said, maybe their grade will go up if they get a bunch for Deshaun Watson and can turn it into something, but yeah, it's just a bunch of, like, average signings, so average grade.
Yep. Moving on to the Indianapolis Colts. They re-signed Mo Alley Cox, 3 year, 18 mil, and then they brought in Yannick Ngakoue from a trade from the Raiders. That was really their only big moves. And they don't have a quarterback right now. Obviously, they traded away Carson Wentz. I should include that. So my one, I'll give them I like the Ngakoue trade, so I'll give them C plus B minus, something around there. Just because I don't know I honestly have no clue what their plans are going for quarterback. Are they going to trade for Jimmy G? Are they going to draft a quarterback? Actually have no idea. Like I haven't seen anything rumored or anything. But I do like the Ngakoue trade, so I'll give them a B minus just because of the Ngakoue trade.
I'm gonna give give them a C just because not because of the signings they've made. I like all the signings they have. We know they got a decent team. Like, they should have been a playoff team last year. They kinda choked it, but they got a good offense. They got good running backs, obviously, and Jonathan Taylor. They got good receivers, and their defense is decent. Um, better than decent, probably. But it doesn't really matter. Like we said earlier about Cleveland, it doesn't really matter if you don't have a quarterback. So they're quickly running out of time, and their name isn't really in the Deshaun Watson talks. So yeah, I don't know what they're thinking quarterback wise, and you can have all the talent on your team, but you're not going to make the playoffs. You don't have a quarterback. So I'll give him a C.
Um, oh, go ahead and finish.
Yeah, that's all. I'll give him a C.
Moving on with the Jaguars, who spent a lot of money. They brought in Christian Kirk on a 4 year, $72 million deal. They brought in Zay Jones on 3 year, 24. They brought in Evan Ingram on a 1 year, 9. They franchise tag Cam Robinson. They brought in Brandon Sheriff on a 3 year, $49 million deal, which I think is a great deal. They brought in, like I said earlier, Foye Aluakon on a 3-year 45, and then they brought in Darius Williams on a 3-year 30. I'm gonna give them a C just because I don't like the Christian Kirk signing. I think that's a lot of money for sort of a guy who hasn't really like I think he's a good player, but I don't think he's sort of like has been like I don't know. I don't think like he hasn't. He's only shown flashes. I don't think he's actually like a statement player. Like he's sort of made a name for himself yet. I like the Brandon Sheriff signing. Obviously he's a Pro Bowl guard, so it's kind of hard not to like that signing. And then as a Falcons fan, I like that Foye Oluokun got paid. Um, and then the one signing I really like is the Darius Williams signing because they don't their cornerbacks are pretty bad. They have Shaquille Griffin, who got burnt a lot last year, and they brought in Darius Williams right now. But just because I don't like that Christian Kirk signing, just because I don't think he's really um, proved himself yet, I'll give him a C.
I mean, I've gone back to saying this about most of the teams here, but a team really depends on a quarterback, and for that reason, and the moves they got, I'm actually going to give them a B minus just because they went out and signed all this offensive. I mean, they're decent players. Like Christian Kirk's decent, Zay Jones decent, Evan Ingram's decent, which means they want to roll with Trevor Lawrence, and I feel like they're showing him that hey, we want you, we're giving you weapons, like let's see what you can do. And I like what the management front office of the Jags are trying to say to their quarterback if what I'm thinking is right. So I'm actually going to give him a B minus.
Moving on, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. The three big moves they sort of did. They franchise tagged Orlando Brown Jr. They re-signed guard or lineman Andrew Wiley, and they brought in um, former Texas safety Justin Reed. So the Reed signing sort of to me shows that they're not bringing back Tyrann Mathieu. But I think that Justin Reed is a fine replacement. Obviously, I think Tyrann Mathieu is a better player, but not by much. Justin Reed's a very underrated safety as he's been playing for the Texans for the last couple of years and hasn't really been getting recognition. And then they re-signed their two sort of linemen that they needed to protect Mahomes. So they didn't get any worse, but they also didn't get any better, in my opinion.
Yeah, and for that reason, what'd you give them?
I think I gave him a B.
I was going to give them a C plus just for that reason exactly. You're basically bringing the exact same team back, just sub in Justin Reed for Tyrann Mathieu, and you got basically the same team. So I mean, they don't have to do anything because they got one of the best teams in the league. But yeah, they like we said, they didn't really do much, so it's hard to give them like a high grade. So I'll give them a C plus.
Moving on, we have the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm gonna give them a C. The reason I'm gonna give them a C is because they made all these moves. They traded for Devontae Adams. They traded for Rocky Sin, cornerback. They gave Anthony Averett a 1-year deal. They brought in Chandler Jones, but I still think they're the worst team in that division, and that's the reason I'm going to give them a C. I think that sort of they should have start their rebuild, but yet they went and got a 31-year-old Chandler Jones for 3 years. They went and got a 29-year-old Devontae Adams and re-signed him to a big contract. But I still think they're the worst team in that division, so that's the main reason why I'll give them a C.
I really agree with that, but I'm still going to give them a high grade. I'm going to give them a B plus, and I totally agree they're the worst team in this division. But it's a good division, and we like they want to show their fans that they're just not going to back down. They're showing Derek Carr they want to get him weapons again, the quarterback talk, and they want to roll with Derek Carr and see what can happen. So I mean, yeah, like they brought a lot of good players. Obviously, Devontae Adams being at the top of that list, but like they're still the worst team in that division. But is it nice to see them actually try and compete? Yes, that's kind of where I'm at. It's nice to see them not like their division. Everyone in their division gets better. So we were like, okay, are the Raiders just going to fold or are they going to try? And it looks like they're trying. So it's good to see. I give them a B plus.
Um, Moving on, we have a team that's in that division. We have the Los Angeles Chargers. They re-signed Mike Williams, 3-year, 60 mil. They brought in D tackle Sebastian Joseph Day from the Rams, 3 years, 24 mil. They obviously traded for Khalil Mack. They brought in J.C. Jackson, 5 years, 82.5 mil. This is gonna be my first good grade. Actually, I think I gave a team an A. I'm gonna give an A. The one thing I don't like the Mike Williams contract. I think it's a lot of money for sort of a guy who was great at the start of the season and sort of fell off towards the end. I love the J.C. Jackson trade. That secondary is elite with Chris Harris, Derwin James. There's somebody else, and then you go and look at the D line. They got Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa on the same line, and then they add Sebastian Joseph Day, who's a giant nose tackle. He's another big boy, I think 350. That just clogs up the middle. Um, so yeah, I honestly I love what the Chargers did this offseason. I think that they have a chance in that loaded division.
Yeah, it's hard to say anything more like that. Like, I'll just basically repeat what Noah said, like, from last year. Their offense was definitely not the question. We knew they got a good offense. It was sort of that defense that was caught allowing quite a bit of points some weeks. Um, and they stacked that up, like Noah just said, mentioning all those names. So they're a scary team, both sides of the ball now. I wouldn't want to mess with either. And um, I mean, they brought back Mike Williams. I didn't think they were, to be honest. I didn't think he was going to come back, and he's back now. So they definitely got a good team. And this is a loaded division.
Moving on, we have the other LA team, the Los Angeles Rams, who brought in Allen Robinson on a 3-year, $46 million deal, and that's really the only deal they've sort of done so far. I'm gonna give him a B minus. We all know what the type of player that Allen Robinson can be. But the key word there is can. Can he sort of be that player we saw 2 years ago, or will he be the sort of player we saw last year? The player we saw 2 years ago is arguable top 10 player in the NFL or top 10 receiver in the NFL, where the player we saw last year is arguably barely a top 50 player in the NFL. They gave him a lot of money, so obviously they think he can bounce back. I personally think he can bounce back. And obviously last year he didn't have very stable quarterback play. This year he will have a stable quarterback play. So it's all up to him if he can bounce back, but I'm gonna give him a B minus.
Yeah, that's where it's so hard to grade this because basically, like you said, they kept everything the same except, I mean, they're basically they're putting in Allen Robinson uh, instead of Odell. It's basically what it is. I mean, unless they can bring back Odell, but I doubt it after this. So it's hard to I'll give him a B because like Noah was saying, people forget how good this guy was, and he's never really had a good quarterback in his career. He's went from like Foles to
Trubisky, he had
Trubisky. Oh my
Trubisky, he
god.
had Justin Fields, he had Andy
Yeah.
Dalton.
He's never had a good quarterback in his life. So we'll see how a quarterback like Matthew Stafford can open up his range. I think he can do well, like Noah was saying. I mean, he's very good, obviously. No one's saying that. I think people just forget a little bit because of recency bias, but I think he can definitely be better than Odell at this current point in their careers. So I'll give him a B right now, but it could definitely be higher depending on how he plays.
Moving on, we have the Miami Dolphins. They brought in Teddy Bridgewater to be a backup quarterback. They brought in Chase Edmonds on a 2-year, 12.6. They brought in Cedric Wilson, 3 years, 22.8. They franchise tag Mike Gesicki. They brought in former Cowboys guard Connor Williams on 2-year, 14. Um, I'll sort of give them a B. I think it's a pretty solid offseason. Um, Chase Edmonds and what's his name there?
Who?
They're
You
running back
can
right now. Miles Gaskin will sort
ask
of
him.
be the two-headed monster, even though it's not much of a monster. I like the Cedric Wilson signing. He's been sort of underrated on the Cowboys for the last couple seasons because he's obviously been stuck behind those amazing Cowboy receivers. Mike Gesicki obviously had a great year last year, bringing back on the franchise tag, and I like the Connor Williams signing to protect your franchise quarterback in Tua.
Yeah, like Noah was saying, they added a lot, especially to their offense. Now they got like Chase Edmonds, Miles Gaskin, Raheem Mostert, and now they got I don't know if they'll bring Parker back now because of this. But I mean, they still like
They have Waddle.
Cedric Wilson, when he was when the Cowboys were having injuries, he stepped in and played really well.
Great. He played
Yeah,
great.
he was better than Gallup because Noah had Cedric Wilson in fantasy. I had Gallup, and I was like, sweet, Gallup will go off, but it was Wilson who went off.
I
So
won
he's
that week
very
too.
underrated, like Noah was saying, and also Mike Gesicki. He's been on this team for a while. He knows what's going on. He's a very good tight end. He can pop off any week. And then Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, I know he's just a backup, but he's been in the league for so long. He's got good probably advice. He's got a lot of things he can teach Tua, probably to be a little more patient because we know Teddy's just he's steady Teddy. So I mean, I think Tua could learn a lot from Teddy, and only for $6.5 million a year is a steal. I think so. Their offense is scary for sure.
Moving on to Minnesota Vikings, they brought in Harrison Phillips, former Bills D tackle, on a 3-year, $19.5 million deal, and then they brought in former Cardinals linebacker Jordan Hicks on a 2-year, 10. I personally like the Hicks signing. He was great last year for the Vikings. He just had a high cap hit, which is why they had to release him. Other than that, I don't like the Kirk Cousins signing because they paid him a lot of freaking money, and I think he's
Mhm.
literally one of the most overrated quarterbacks in the league. But now that sort of the Green Bay Packers are in shambles, I won't say they're in shambles, but they're sort of confused. I think that Minnesota does have a chance to compete with Green Bay for this title
Oh,
of this
100%.
division. Um, I would have liked to see them do a bit more. Obviously, this once they sort of even at the start of the offseason when they knew that there's a possibility that Aaron Rodgers didn't come back, they sort of would have jumped on that opportunity. But even then, I still think they have a chance. So I'm going to give them a I'll give them a C plus just because I would have liked them to do a bit more.
Yeah, you stole my my talking point there. I was gonna give him a C plus as well, and it might be because they're in the same division as the Packers, but also you said exactly what I wanted to say. There was a lot of talk about Aaron Rodgers not coming back. There was a lot of talk about Devontae Adams not coming back. And when you hear that, you got to go all in. You got to start making some moves because this division could easily, even with the team they have now, this division could easily be theirs. But if they would have added a couple more guys, like it wouldn't even be a discussion probably. So um, the division's definitely up there, and I would have liked to see them. Well, I'm happy they didn't do anything, but as a fan, if I was a Minnesota Vikings fan, I would have liked to see them do a little bit more to take that division by storm.
Moving on, we have the New England Patriots. Obviously, they lost J.C. Jackson. Um, they didn't really do anything. They just
No, they
re-signed a lot of
didn't.
players. They literally
Yeah.
just re-signed. They re-signed Devin McCourty, who's 35. They brought back James White. They brought back James Conner. I'm gonna give them a C just because the Bills got better and they didn't get any better. And I thought last year that the Patriots had a chance to be a better team than the Bills. But they just didn't really do much.
Yeah, for that reason exactly, I'm gonna go even lower and give them a C minus. Like we saw the Denver Broncos get Russell Wilson, so what did teams do? We saw the Chargers go out and get Merlin Mack. We saw the Raiders go out and get Devontae Adams.
You just said
And then
Marlon Mack instead of Khalil Mack.
sorry, sorry, I meant to say Khalil, not Merlin Mack. Who is he?
He's a running back.
Anyways, so yeah, if you look at this division, you see Buffalo get people like Von Miller and such, and you were waiting to see a response from New England, and it never really came. They just, like Noah said, they basically signed players back that they already had. So yeah, I'll give them a C minus because I don't think they'll be as close as they were last year.
The New Orleans Saints, they had no cap space. They restructured nothing. They brought in one player. They brought in Jets safety Marcus May on a 3-year, $28.5 million deal. It's their Marcus Williams replacement. Obviously, I think Marcus Williams is a better safety than Marcus May, but Marcus May is no slouch whatsoever. And they are still in on the Deshaun Watson talks right now. I believe it's down to the Saints or the Falcons. So one of the Deshaun Watson will be heading into the same division as Tom Brady, unless he doesn't get traded. But the only reason I'm going to give them a B is because I like the way they restructure their contracts in order to get cap space. Am I taking your words?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like how they sort of went from no cap space and they restructured a bunch of contracts and got cap space, and now they're in on Deshaun Watson. So I'm going to give them a B.
Yeah, we were talking about this. I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, but I asked you because I know at the beginning of last year, the Saints, I think, were the worst team for cap space. They were in the luxury tax by like negative like 50 million or something like that. And when we saw the notification that the Saints were one of the two teams left in Deshaun Watson, I asked you personally, I was like, how is that even possible? And I mean, you told me about all the restructuring they did. So I was actually going to give them a B too, because even though they didn't do anything, um, I mean, up to this point, there's still plenty of time. They went from one of the worst cap teams to having a little bit of money to work with. So,
I mean,
oh,
30 mil is a little bit of money in my opinion.
what's that?
30 mil, that's a lot of
Yeah,
money.
well, you know what I mean.
Yeah. Moving on, we have the Giants, who they didn't really do much either. They brought in Tyrod, sort of back up Danny Jones, which I think is actually a good move because Daniel Jones has not proven himself yet. So if all of a sudden he's not doing well, you can throw in Tyrod. And I like this. I like the signing of bringing in Ricky Seals. Ricky Seals, in the time that he played with the Commanders last year, he actually didn't waste his opportunity. He sort of took that opportunity. Bring him in on a. It doesn't say honestly on CBS what he got him for, but obviously they lost Evan Ingram. Um, they cut Kyle Rudolph, so Ricky Seals Jones is going to be the number one tight end in that tight end room.
Yeah, they didn't really do a whole lot, but they filled positions that were needed. Like Daniel Jones has not proven himself, and they've given him time to show it, and he still hasn't. So bringing in Tyrod to be a backup and possibly a starter midway through the season isn't bad. And like Noah said about Ricky Seals Jr., I had Logan Thomas and Ricky Seals Jones, sorry, in my fantasy team because Logan Thomas was out. And like Noah said, in the time uh, Logan Thomas was out, Ricky Seals Jones did great. He made a couple catches, he had a couple touchdowns. He definitely was no slouch. He's a big body, can block, can catch. He's scary in the end zone. So they filled holes that were needed. They didn't do anything spectacular, so I give them like a C plus. But they filled holes that were empty with Evan Ingram being gone.
Moving on next, we have the other New York team in the New York Jets. They actually signed a lot of players. They brought back Braxton Berrios, who sort of popped off near the end of the season. 2 years, 12 mil. They brought in former Bengals tight end CJ Uzama, 3 years, 24. They brought in former Vikings tight end Tyler Conklin, 3 years, 21. They brought in Laken Tomlinson for former 49ers guard for 3 years, 40 mil. They brought in Lamarcus Joyner, 1 year, 4.5 mil. And they brought in former Buccaneers safety Jordan Whitehead. Obviously, it's a step in the right direction for the Jets. I still don't think they're ready to compete yet. I'll give them a B just because I think that it wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. I like the Laken Tomlinson pick up. Obviously, they took Zach Wilson number 2 last year, so they got to get somebody to block him. And then the one thing that I didn't like that they signed sort of two solid tight ends. It didn't really
Yeah,
make sense to me.
no, I agree. But yeah, like I'm sort of on the same boat as you. I think it sort of goes back to my opinion on the Jags. Like they signed a couple people, like the two tight ends, for example, and they brought back Braxton Berrios, who had a good year, and Tevin Coleman. I think they're just again they're trying to show Zach Wilson like, hey, um, I mean, even though the record didn't show, I think they're impressed with him. I think they still want to roll with him again, see what goes on next year. And they're bringing some good tight ends, like Noah said. These guys are no slouches in themselves. And then they improve that defense. That definitely needed to be improved. I like the Jordan Whitehead signing for sure.
Moving on, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. The really move they only made, they brought in former Panthers rusher Hassan Reddick, 3 years, 45 mil. I really like the signing because he was a beast last year. So I'm actually going to give them an A just because I think that they do have a chance to compete in that division. Obviously, they made the playoffs last year. They didn't do very well against the Bucks, but it sort of gave Jalen Hurts that playoff experience, gave that whole team sort of playoff experience. Um, and I like the Hassan Reddick signing, so I'm going to give him an A.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna give him a B plus. The signing obviously is big for this defense that desperately needed help. But the question I got is like who's your number one wide receiver? Like,
Devontae Smith.
I guess, but I would have liked to see them sign a wide receiver. I think there's still time, obviously, and they still can. I think they need
There's still
another wide.
plenty of receivers out there right now.
Yeah, like if they get a guy like Odell or something, this team would be nice.
Moving on to the Steelers, they signed the GOAT, Mitchell Trubisky, 2 years, 14 and a half. They re-signed Dwayne Haskins. They re-signed Chukama Okafor. I know I butchered that name, but I do know who that is. They brought in former Bears guard James Daniels, 3 years, 26. And then the one I like, they brought in Miles Jack, former linebacker for the Jags, 2 years, 16 mil. And then they also brought in former Bills corner Levi Wallace, 2 years, 8 mil. I'm gonna give this a C just because I think that they're in that compete range. Like they have a great defense. They obviously have great weapons. They have Claypool, Deontay Johnson, Pratt Fryermuth. They have a good old line right now. but then they bring in Mitchell Trubisky to be their starter, and it's like, what are you doing? Like, you were literally one of the teams rumored to pick up Aaron Rodgers potentially, and then they bring in Mitchell Trubisky. So it's kind of just confuses me. Like, you got a prime TJ Watt, you got a prime Cam Hayward, you got a prime Minka Fitzpatrick. It's just sort of confusing me. So I'm gonna give them a C just because I don't know where they're really going.
Yeah, I'll go a little bit higher. I'll be in the C plus B minus range. They still have a great team, and they added to that. Their defense looks even better, and their defense was great last year. I think I'm a little higher on the Mitchell Trubisky signing actually than you are. I'm definitely not excited about it. Doesn't excite me in any way. Um, but he's still young. His career passing completion percentage isn't terrible. Like it's decent, and he's young. I mean, he got to sit behind Josh Allen. Maybe he learned a thing or two from that. He also didn't really have any options on the Bears other than Robinson, so maybe the extra options in Claypool and Deontay Johnson. And we'll see what happens to Juju, I guess. Maybe he'll be able to perform a little bit better. So I'll give them like a C plus B minus.
Moving on, we have the 49ers. The really only big move they made was they brought in former Chiefs cornerback Travaris Ward, 3 years, 40.5 mil. I think it's a bit of a gamble, but their one weak spot on their defense was corner. So I do like the corner signing. However, I will give them a C plus just because I don't think they've sort of made that market yet for Jimmy G. And they drafted Trey Lance at 3 last year, so they obviously are in the Jimmy G trade route, but they sort of haven't established that market yet.
Yeah, that's why I'm gonna give them a C. Like they added some nice guys. They lost a couple. That's free agency, I guess, for you. But like, what are you doing with Jimmy G? We gotta like I think people gotta know. The plan at the start of the season was definitely to get rid of him, and then he brought you to an NFC championship, and now it's like, okay, like, do you want him or do you not want him? I mean, I think they gotta figure it out because I think if they can trade Jimmy G, they can get a little bit for him. Obviously, he just made the NFC Championship game. He's played well in the playoffs in his career. Um, so I think they can turn that into a little bit to up to the grade a little bit. But they have two, like obviously Lance is really good, so they gotta choose. They gotta choose one, and you can't stick with both, in my opinion. So we'll see what happens.
Moving on, we have the Seahawks. Obviously, got a bit worse this year. They got Drew Lock in a trade. They got Noah Fant in a trade. They got Chiefs center Austin Blythe. And then they re-signed Quandre Diggs. Sorry, they got Shelby Harris in that trade too. Obviously, they're going on a different route, trading their franchise quarterback for the last 10 years in Russell Wilson. I think it was actually a good move just because I don't that division being so good. I don't think that they were gonna sort of compete for that championship the next 3 years, next 3 to 5 years. I like Noah Fant. I think he's actually very underrated as a tight end. Um, the one thing that I sort of question about, will they what happens with their quarterback? Are they going to rock with Drew Lock? Are they going to take a quarterback at 9 from the Broncos pick? Like, what are they going to do? Oh, I didn't really see this. They brought in Uchenna Nwosu too from the Chargers. I like him. I'll give him a B.
Yeah,
I'll give him a C plus.
I'll give him a B. I think I'm a little higher than most on the matter, but I don't know, just like the Seahawks, in my opinion, they just were never gonna do anything special with the team they had. Obviously, Russell Wilson's good and he was hurt last year, but I mean, I don't know why. Maybe this is just me uh not being smart, but they never scared me even when Russell Wilson was healthy. So I think especially with the division they're in, I think it was good to sort of reset. It sounded like Russell Wilson wanted out anyways. Um my only thought is that if you're trading Russell Wilson and trying to reset, I think you also got to trade Lockett and figure something out there because there's no point in having Lockett and DK if you're going to run with Drew Lock for the season. So I think you got to let one of them go. And personally, DK is still young and very good. And so, I mean, Lockett's good too, but he's just older. So I'd trade Lockett personally.
Agreed. Moving on, we have the Buccaneers. Obviously, they got Tom Brady back out of retirement. But they still had a pretty good offseason other than that. They re-signed Chris Godwin to a 3-year, $60 million. They brought in former Falcons wide receiver Russell Gage on a 3-year, $30 million. They traded for Shaq Mason, Brady's old friend, obviously to take up Alex Kappa's spot. They re-signed their center Ryan Jensen, 3 years, $39 million, and then they re-signed Carlton Davis. I'm gonna give them this is gonna be an A+ for me. I love this offseason. Obviously, they thought they'd lost Tom Brady. They didn't have any cap space, but they still found ways to bring guys back. They got Shaq Mason, who's actually an upgrade on their line. Um, so yeah, I honestly I don't love these moves, obviously, because I'm a Falcons fan, and I thought the Falcons actually had a chance to take that division. But I think that the Buccaneers played this offseason perfectly.
Yeah, I was also gonna give them an A+ just for the fact that you said they brought the same team back, basically, but plus adding Brashawn Perryman and Russell Gage to fill out that wide receiver core, and obviously you got Tom Brady back, and then this might just, be me, but when I hear Tom Brady's back, that also instantly makes me think that if Gronk continues to play football, he will be back on this team because he follows Tom Brady wherever he goes, so
Yep,
they're definitely a team to be scared of again.
definitely. Moving on, we got 2 teams left here. We got Tennessee Titans. The only really they just really sort of made re-signings. They brought back Harold Landry on a 5-year, $87.5 million deal. He got paid, well worth it though. He's a great edge rusher. And then they re-signed center Ben Jones, 2-year, 14 mil. Um, and then obviously they released Julio. Forgot to put that in. I'm gonna give him a C just because I don't think they got any better. At the same time, I don't think they got any worse. And they led that division last year, and that division still isn't very good. With the Colts sort of going the opposite way now. So who knows? I think they still have this division locked up. But they also don't think they got any better. So I'll give them a C.
Yeah, I mean, the website here has them at a B, and I don't really understand that part. I also give them a C. I mean, they got they obviously got a decent offense, but releasing Julio, I mean, Julio didn't do much for them last year, but it's still Julio Jones. So we'll see. They're gonna have to sign some sort of wide receiver to sort of fill that role somehow. But they're obviously a playoff team, like we were talking about. They got the Jags, the Texans, and the Colts. And when you say the second best team in this division doesn't currently have a quarterback, you're probably in a pretty good spot to make the playoffs. So they'll be a playoff team. It's just again, Tennessee's one of them teams that doesn't scare me in the playoffs. They're just kind of going to be there.
Finally, the last team of the video, we have the Washington Commanders. Obviously they traded for Carson Wentz. They brought in former Jags guard Andrew Norwell, and then they re-signed J.D. McKissick. Give him a C. I like the Carson Wentz trade because we were talking about it. I believe it was last episode that we said, depending on what Carson Wentz you're going to get, are you going to get the one from last year? Or are you going to get the one from a couple years ago who was a MVP finalist? At the same time, I don't think they're in any way ready to sort of compete with the um, Cowboys unless they do some big. I still think they got to sign another receiver because right now all you got is Terry McLaurin. So teams are going to be doubling him. I double him every time because he's literally their only weapon right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this in a podcast episode a couple like
I think it
when
was
was
last week.
yeah, and I think I was higher on it than most, and I still am. Like as high up in as like even possibly the B minus range, but I think I'll stick with C plus, um, because they brought back basically the same team they did last year, and I mean that defense was really hurt last year. And I think once healthy, they're definitely above average, that's for sure. And people are saying like this could be bad because Carson Wentz could play like he did the last 2 years, and like my opinion on that is
Still better option than Taylor Heineke.
that's what I'm saying. Like if he plays like he did in the last 2 years, you're not getting anything worse than what Tyler Heineke was giving you. So the upside here is definitely the playoffs for Washington, and if you're gonna make a move like that, playoffs should definitely be your goal. So I'm with it, and I think J.D. McKissick coming back is sort of underrated as well.
Agreed. I think that'll wrap it up for today. Obviously, it's just me and Brandon, so we just sort of went over the free agency signings. But we'll be back next week. Hopefully, all the boys will be able to. Um, Hopefully, all of the other two will be able to join us this time. But if you guys enjoyed, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, check out our Instagram, and we'll be back next week.
See ya.
Later.
Thank you for listening to this Belly Up Sports Podcast Network product. Some said we go belly up, so we made it our name, and we're still here.